Welcome to the Unicorn Talent, the Unicorn Whisperer podcast. You can see I'm wearing my swag. I just got this done.
I love it.
I know we're gonna try to make them available if people start to dig the Unicorn brand. I don't know. We're gonna find out soon. And my name is Eric, and I run Unicorn Talent, which is helping people get from A to B. Right? How do I get to Craft Ventures as a head of talent? How do I get to a head of recruiting role at Uber, et cetera, so on? So they're here to learn from you. I want to learn from you because it's been a while since I've actually heard about what you're doing. So let's dive in.
That sounds good. Well, I'm an open book. Happy to share a little bit about my background if that helps.
Yeah. And for the listeners, you are, and what do you do?
My name's Cassie Chao Leemans. I am VP Talent at Craft Ventures. We have a pretty awesome talent team here at Craft, but I focus predominantly on the executive leadership network for G&A. Anything finance, operations, people, talent, legal. If our portfolio company needs that type of support, they tap me on the shoulder and hopefully I have someone in network. If not, I'm building pipeline for them. So that is.
I see you on LinkedIn posting. If you're not following Cassie, follow her because there's always great jobs at Portcos that are doing
I have a lot of roles being listed now, especially in the talent space. It's been a bit of a drought the last couple of years, so it's nice to see things pick up. And being in this seat as well, we do get to see market trends based off of the types of roles that we get on our radar.
Yes, I always flirt with having a TA job board on Unicorn just so that people can come here, do things, and then apply for some of the jobs that might be relevant. But I see you posting a lot. I'm curious to know how you got into craft. And of course, we've worked together before, so we've had the fortunate opportunity to learn from some of the best in the business together. You know, you have one of the most coveted jobs in the industry. How'd you get there? Like, I'm always curious to know, like, what is the thing that got you this job? Like, if you had one skill that you could say, like, learn this, learn spreadsheets, learn sourcing, learn what is the thing that got you into craft?
I think that I just got very lucky that I was on a list of candidates for my manager to reach out to. And he got that list from somebody. I don't know who it was, but I was on that list. He had reached out to me. At the time, I was in a Sequoia portfolio company. And it was really my first time working super closely with a talent team at a venture capital firm. Sequoia is really known to be hands-on with their investments, and having been a first-in head of talent in a Series B company, I was on an island. I just sat by myself. Most of the engineering roles I already knew how to hire. That's my background. But there were a lot of roles that I had never hired before, such as a director of sales. Like, I don't even know the first thing of how to hire this. So I had reached out to Sequoia's talent team at the time, and they worked really closely with me of getting me connected to sales leaders inside their portfolio. So our founders and I could sit in and listen in on that. This is such a cool role. And I have to shout out to, I call her my career godmother, Teresa Lee. She's out at Sequoia right now. I've known her for over a decade now, but she was the first person I knew that went into VC. And just heard her experience there. And she said, Cassie, if you ever want to get into VC, if one reaches out to you, you should probably respond to them. And I know I had actually ignored a few VC emails, including Sequoia's at one point in time, because I was like, well, I don't want to lead them on. I'm not looking right now, so I'm just not going to respond. But when I was at my last startup, the email came in. I was letting my current manager know, hey, I'm not looking right now. I'm really happy where I'm at. But it got to the point that I did fill all of the headcount at my startup. And like a good recruiter, my boss, Sam, reached out 2 to 3 times afterwards. And that persistence ended up paying off. Ended up interviewing with the team and found myself at Craft.
You found yourself at craft. There's 2 things I take away from that. One, the persistence of the recruiter, which we'll get into how to finesse a candidate as you do the sourcing thing. I'm always interested in people's style, but the thing that resonates with me, my philosophy for getting good in recruiting was stand next to the person that you want to be like. And you can absorb, that's generally where Unicorn came from, is like, there are people who are doing what you are doing. There's no real formal way to get there in our line of work. And so if I can just absorb from the Teresas of the world, then I can end up in a similar position and then be the Teresa to another person who's an up and comer.
Yes. She's A plus in the VC world.
Awesome. Yeah. So the transition from in-house to VC, what's the same? What's different? How is your day changing now that you're essentially working for multiple companies under one umbrella versus working for one as an in-house person?
To laugh because being so used to having quota and making sure that you're hitting your benchmarks, making sure that you have job security because you're hitting your benchmarks and making sure that your team is hitting quota is very different than being here in the VC side. We actually don't have mandates to hit a certain number of placements. If anything, we care a lot more about the quality of conversations that are happening. Yes, we'd like to get introductions to our portfolio companies if they're seeking a specific type of executive leader to talk to. But at the end of the day, we don't want to waste their time either, right? So we shouldn't be sending 50 introductions for one role. It should be like, hey, let's calibrate first. Let's send you a first batch. If this is not it, how do we pivot the sourcing profile? How do we pivot the vetting that I'm doing up front to make sure that those next calls were right on the money for you, right? And on top of that, we are not actually engaging on the interviewing side. So if anything, I try and stay lockstep with my candidates. Hey, how's it going? Like, are they moving you forward in the process? But we do also weekly syncs with some of our portfolio companies if they want to be very hands-on with us. And I just hold them accountable. Hey, please move your candidates forward. I'm obviously keeping track of them as well. They're letting me know if you're too slow or you're too fast, right? Any type of advice that we can give to them through the process, we will do. But that's really where that big difference is, at least where we stay at Craft, is we're not fully embedded with them, but we try to be as supportive as we possibly can. And we also do focus just on executive. So anything IC level requests that comes through, that will be an ad hoc referral here and there. Additionally, given my background on the team is focused on in-house experience, the rest of my team comes from executive search experience. A lot of those requests do come to me of, hey, we are actually really struggling to hire. I feel like I'm burnt out. We recently just had a portfolio company's head of engineering reach out and was like, I interviewed 40 people for an eng manager and I still haven't gotten someone to on-site.
Those
Just like,
those conversion rates don't fly.
yes, exactly. So then within an hour, I try and audit their process with them, see if there's things that I can help them optimize, give them a recap email of all the things we've talked about, any recommendations for them, really why you don't need 3 technical screens before someone comes on site, right? Anything I've learned from my experience that we had failed on before or we had really hurt ourselves in the process, we usually try and focus on providing them that context too. We don't get as deep and granular, but it is something that I really enjoy still, is keeping me in the weeds somehow with our growing stage startups.
Yes, so before Unicorn was what it is today, it was an advisory firm for founders. So all these materials that we have are very founder centric, but they take the principles of what you and I had done in volume, in mass, and the concepts still remain the same. Like 3 technical, I mean, I get it. I'm a founder now, so I really want to be sure of the people that I'm hiring because you kind of get one shot and there's so much ownership on one individual, but there's a balance between how many times you try to suss something out versus the return on that investment for you as a founder. I'm sure you're advising your founders similar to the way that we were doing about these trade-offs in 100% sure before you hire somebody and having a certain level of confidence. You know, executive that's a tough grind because it's such a, high level role with an individual company.
Yeah, we've been fortunate actually. If we have hiring teams that are pretty locked in with what they want, we can close roles pretty quickly at the executive level, even C-suite with them. But then ones who really don't know what they're looking for, it'll be months and months and months and to no avail. And that's really where we still try and reel them in. Hey, let's actually see what your competency matrix says, because I started reading feedback from interviewers. Hey, something's not aligning here. Like, why are you okay with this feedback and no one's pushing back on your interviewer when it doesn't actually align to what they were supposed to be talking about, right? So then you
Yes.
start seeing problems in the interview process.
Yeah, there's a lot of without a singular owner over the whole process, right? I think that's something that you and I crafted very well from our unicorn, or the experience we had at Uber and other companies similar too, is like there are many different stakeholders who are all very senior and very sure of their opinion, but they all come together on the recruiting process, and without one person kind of owning it, without an individual bias towards an outcome, it becomes, the side effect of that is time. It just takes a while because then you have to nail everything. It's like you have to get consensus on these candidates for these wildly kind of like the Venn diagram, the intersection can be very narrow. So having a very unbiased kind of process leader, we call it talent partner, view on what's going on in the interview process can be super helpful. And we encourage people to do it with a good intake session and a competency-based interview rubric and a debrief that reviews the competencies and allows people to like push back on if they have the competencies, why are they still a no, or vice versa. How do you get them to go from 3 technical screens to 1, or 40 candidates and I don't know what I want to, all right, we've defined it and we've made it happen. Like, how do you, what as a, talent leader in VC, like what is your level of influence? How much can you push on these folks?
Well, we can only share, yeah, we can only share with them the experience that we've had, right? And I do repeat myself quite frequently. A lot of the experiences are the same, where hiring managers or founders think that their interview process is the bee's knees and it is the one that they want to do. And I'm like, that's fine. Here's my recommendation, just given the pain that I lived through and having seen it repeated for over 10 years, the problems that you're going to run into. If you want to keep going the way that you want to, that's fine, but I may hear from you 6 months from now. And that's happened before as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so the example of the hiring manager that had 3 technical screens, and with him being the first one, just like, that's not a really good use of your time, right? Like, you should have cut that off after 10 not making it forward. Who on your team do you trust, right? You hired this team. Who do you trust that's going to be the best interviewer, but also the best salesperson for your organization to conduct that first screen? And they're like, so-and-so on the team. I'm like, fantastic. And what are they asking on that call? Is there going to be a definitive set of questions and the expected response that you're expecting from them? And it's hard with eng manager type roles too, because they do need to be hands-on coding, but they also need to be good at people managing, right? And you need more of that player coach type of person. But a lot of the times they expect an eng manager to pretty much be like a staff software engineer at the same time. And not every one of them is going to be that way. So if you're going to start kicking people out of process after that first screen based off of that, like, are you actually attuned to what you're going to get in the market? That's the first step, right? But then the second step too is, okay, now you're getting to the nitty gritty of how they formatted their code. Are they going to be doing that for you, right? Like, set the right expectation of what are the gaps you currently need. You actually have too many people on your team and you need them to manage more and do more code reviews. Why are you having them code the first thing and then eliminating them if they don't have the perfectly optimized and elegant code for you? That's like not solving the problem on your team. And then giving them the example of, I've had situations where we're like, oh, we didn't get enough signal on the first technical screen, so let's do a second technical screen. And I have told many hiring managers, what happens there is it kind of gives a cop out to your first interviewer. Your first interviewer can be like, I'm a so-so, I'm a maybe, I kind of got signal, and I'm going to make this next person do it for me. You don't actually get more signal doing that. Instead, you have 2 interviewers that were like lukewarm, instead of diving in and trying to actually capture the signal over that 45 to 1 hour conversation they had with the candidate. It's like, save your team time. Stop making another person interview when that was your job.
Get them uncomfortable. Yeah, what I heard is, like, you brought up a few things. One, if you look at a funnel, the person at the top of the funnel is going to have the most time. That's where all the conversion starts breaking down. So if you have the most important or the most expensive person doing the first interview, you're going to waste a lot of time at the top of the funnel. And the next thing I heard was, if you don't have competencies about what it is that you're looking for, where you can have this defined yes/no framework about, this is what, if they're not going to be coding, we should not be measuring so much depth in their coding. Having good competencies and a strong yes/no framework about them is the next thing I heard. And then the last thing is, interview training. getting people comfortable with getting to a yes or a no and giving them the space to voice their opinion so that you can close interviews in a lower amount. It takes less interviews to get the person to a decision, which is a better experience for everybody. Do you feel like now that you don't own a quota, so to speak, that it's easier for you to deliver this advisory to these founders or to these interviewers? Or did you find like when you were in-house and you really had a vested interest, you could really enact change? Like which one?
That's a fun question. I feel like I'm probably more empowered sitting in the VC seat where it's decoupled from what my outcome is, right? If a hiring manager wants to do something a certain way, great. That's on you. I'm going to give you best practices. If you don't want to implement them, I'll be happy to advise you down the line, right? But in-house, I feel like, and I've told people this before too, with my history, is like I was that yes recruiter where I will run through brick walls for you to help you close people or get people across the finish line. I don't necessarily agree with that version of my experience, right? You do have to have teams really protect their own team's time, really protect the candidate's time as well, because the candidate journey is really important there too. And I don't think I really got that sense from when I was early Uber. We were also very lucky with our brand at the time. People wanted to run through brick walls to come work with us as well. I mean, the numbers just kept getting larger. We need more, we need more, we need more, right? And you're kind of like, yes, we'll do whatever it takes to do this. Batch days, whatever it takes. We'll go to different locations. And I don't necessarily agree with that anymore. And especially the way the market has turned, it's like every net new hire is so critical for the company.
Yeah.
Gotta be specific to what the company's use case is. And you don't want to spend 100 hours hiring one person, right? There's something severely wrong with your process if that is the case.
Yeah. Do you have a benchmark or a standard that you try to give founders? Like this is how long it should take to hire at the executive level? Do you that you kind of like operate?
That's a little bit different because every company, especially dependent on stage that they're requesting this exec leader, is going to really affect the length of time because it is timing and the number of people in that talent pool. Let's say if we're going way later growth stage, triple digit million in ARR, not a ton of people are going to have that specific experience we're looking for, right? But if you're going like first in 10 to 30 million in revenue, you kind of manage a team before, you want to be scrappy, you want to build 0 to 1. We've got a lot of different types of repeat roles happening in that sense. It's really dependent, but I would say at the IC level, that's a little easier to talk about as well. If you are spinning your gears and not able to get someone on site within a month's time of you sourcing people, there is something wrong with your process.
No, I would, you're more generous than I would probably go a little bit sooner than a month, but I source for my own business now just because I have that recruiter in me, but I haven't done the job in a way that's, gives me that insight. So
I think it's way just more on the hiring manager too of IC is a little bit different, but on the executive side, the way that I look at it is, hey, let's have some 5 to 10 profiles first that you are talking to after we've calibrated on paper. We recognize on paper doesn't necessarily translate to this person knows how to do the job. So let's have these conversations first. I've vetted them. They meet the mark competency wise at a very high level, but have you as the founder or hiring manager deep dive into what you need out of this executive. If there is something consistently missing in those competencies, we repivot after that, right? It should be a constant iteration cycle, which is why I request that I meet with my hiring teams once a week or over Slack or both in the early stages. Is let's get that repeatable iteration process going. And then once we lock in on the right calibrated profile, it's clear I'm not going to be wasting your time anymore. Every net new profile is fully vetted on every competency you want. So the next conversations you have should move towards later stages in the process. And then we don't have to meet as often.
That's actually super interesting. I wonder, I'd be curious to see the pre-calibration funnel and the post-calibration funnel because, when you and I were recruiting in mass at Uber,
there was no calibration. We just sent people forward.
Well, yeah, true. But eventually we got to a point where I remember I was hiring, DOps or driver operations, and it got so formulaic that we could have this very predictable conversion rate. But at the very beginning of my time there, we were distributed geographically and different geographies just had had to calibrate their own. And my funnel did not look, if I were to recommend what a funnel looks like to somebody today, mine was not like that. And it took us a little bit. And it's kind of like an advertisement for doing a good intake session, doing a good interview rubric, and trying to like nail down the competencies that people are going for, because the calibration funnel is just going to be a lot noisier. And, unless you have the high touch, you probably run you probably have a higher standard, I would say, as a portfolio leader for a network than the average recruiter would internally, because if they don't fill the role for one company, they could fill another role for another company. So if you're not giving them good feedback about why they didn't get the job, or like really giving them a reason why they should spend another process worth of time with you, especially at the executive level, then they're probably not going to be in your pipeline too much longer. So my tell me if I'm right or wrong, but you probably have a higher bar for delivering some form of actionable feedback to a person who didn't make it through one of your processes than an internal would.
If I'm lucky enough to get the feedback, yes, I will always share what I can do to support them for the rest of their interview processes. And yes, that is very different than working in-house, right? In-house, you're like, well, that was the role I had, and you didn't meet the bar for the company. So hopefully maybe in a couple years, like you get more experience, so you can revisit. And we've had cases like that before. But here internally, I'm building a network for our overarching portfolio, right? We can have many Series B businesses looking for a similar type of profile. And hey, this background doesn't quite align with this company, but man, you have a cybersecurity background and a cybersecurity investment just came up on our radar. Let's actually send that forward to you and see if timing is right and get that intro conversation happening. So yes, I do have a lot of repeat candidates that will pop back up and a new opportunity will show up. But not only that too, just even talking about the setting them up for success conversation, I'm still in the camp of not letting your candidates just walk into an interview blind. That's one where it's like, to me, it's obvious you want your candidate to shine no matter what. And I tell hiring managers this all the time too, is like, you shouldn't be tricking people and being like, oh, well, they slipped up and didn't have an example for XYZ. It's like, they probably did the job already, right? They didn't know what you cared about, and you didn't make it clear as the interviewer as well what you're actually looking for. And so that not only is like competency alignment, but it's more like is your candidate prepared to have the same conversation that the hiring manager is having, right? So I actually prep my candidates as much as I can, and I don't think it's cheating. If you've done it before, prepare that example, right? Like if you want to go deep into metrics with a candidate, let that candidate pull their metrics prior to it. And then of course you can dig in and see if they like made up their numbers or whatnot, but have them at least have the ability to have that in front of them to prove to you that this is something that they've done.
I was just about to ask, like, what's your take on interview prep and how much do you give away, and how your founders take it, right? Because I think different people perceive interviews to be different type of tests. So being prepared is one approach, and there's varying opinion about it, I would say.
Yeah, I've heard many a difference on that. For me, I learned it from my last company who just had an amazing candidate journey for their candidates. And we had a very lengthy interview process. Initially, before I had started, it was like a 7-day on-site. And I know, then we reduced it to 5, then to 2. Unfortunately, I could get them down to 1, but every candidate knew exactly what they were walking into. And instead, with that 5-day on-site, it was like they were working with us, right? This is who you'd be working with on design, and this is who you'd be working with on engineering. And this is going to be the project you work on. You know ahead of time exactly what we expect. It's a product feature we've already built before. So yes, we already know what we'd like to see, but we want you to know what we'd like to see as well, right? And see like how you can work with your potential teammates on what that process is going to look like. Setting them up for success made every single candidate feel taken care of, right? And ever since then, I have trained hiring teams. You want your candidate to put their best foot forward. Otherwise, it's a waste of your team's time, right? Why are you interviewing people just to trick them or interrogate them and make them look bad or like make them fall on their face? There is no point in doing that. You are trying to fill a gap on your team. You're trying to see if this next person on your team is going to fill that gap. And if you're like trying to make them fail, that's not going to help you, right? It's like, how do you ensure that they are performing at their peak? They really know what to bring to the table. What you care about is going to be different than what another company cares about. How do they show that to you in a 1 hour time span? Right? Or even if it's a 5 hour time span, you should prep them on that. If you think, oh, this is a guessing game, they got to show us all of their colors, right? Like they have to show us everything they're good at in this small amount of time. Do you think that's actually plausible? And if so, great. Like, I hope that you find your candidates that work for you. But I think there's always something to be said about making sure that people are putting their best foot forward and taking that opportunity to shine for you, because that's ultimately what you're looking for.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's better to evaluate three candidates who know what the right answer is and are giving their best attempt at, customizing their approach versus somebody who you interview three folks, you don't tell them what you're looking for, and then you just so happen to hire the person who gets it on that, like in that interview? It feels like if you prep everyone, then you get to evaluate their correct answers. But if you don't prep people, you're just going to hire the person who said what you were looking for since they're the best, but they might not
Yeah,
have had
that's
the
a
best
great
answer.
point. I can give you an example. I hire a lot for revenue operations. Heavily on the enterprise side is going to be sales operations focus. So a lot of candidates think I better shine on sales operations. But little do they know, some of my companies care more about the marketing operations side and don't say anything. So the entire conversation is about sales operations, and they will crush it on that side of the business. And then I get the scorecard of like, well, this person doesn't have enough marketing operations. Like, well, you never told them that that mattered, right? Like, how did they know to share that with you? Your job description actually swings very heavy sales ops, right? And that's why I talk about alignment up front too, is like, does your competencies say what you're looking for? Does your job description match that as well? And then, like, how are you actually evaluating them? And if they think one thing because of the only information they have is from your job description, that's what they're going to try and emphasize, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of bad job descriptions out there, right? They kind of don't even align to what they're looking for sometimes. I have to scratch my head and tell candidates, like, hey, you actually need to cover some marketing ops stuff because it's not in the job description. Right? And that's just a simple.
100%. Oh, yeah, I have an idea, the way that we look at candidate branding, let's call it, although I know that that's a broad term, so I'm probably going to offend some people, but like the job description needs to match the interview rubric, needs to match the leveling framework, needs to match the recruiting pitch, so that the thing the candidate hears before they talk to anyone matches the thing they hear all the way up to when they're in the seat. And you eliminate these surprises so that you have, because we don't get to see how many of the candidates that didn't work out would have actually worked out. Like, you don't get that data point in recruiting. They're just a no. So,
You
I try to give.
this happens at every single level. I have a CFO search right now too. We need them heavy for strategic finance. I get scorecard feedback that is like not accounting strong enough. I'm like, that's
It's
not the focus of the role. What's
it's
happening?
always going to happen.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
always going to happen. But I think like that's what makes, right, when you and I were sitting next to the best and developing our own careers, like we saw, or at least I'll speak for myself, I saw how people kind of honed in these hiring managers. I think hiring is one of those things that everyone can be good at, and therefore everyone thinks that they're great at it. And there's just these little nuanced things that experience will teach you about predefining something or interviewing against a rubric that, really make all the difference. And kind of like if you're looking at conversion rates at scale, that's the difference between somebody who's super efficient and somebody who has a lot of noise in their funnel, a lot of drop off. But what else is, but outside of the candidate experience, what does day to day look like at Craft Ventures? Like, what does a week look like? What do you expect from your portfolio companies? What do they expect of you? For those who have never, a lot of our listeners have never worked around VC or in VC, so they're curious to know, like, what is that job and how is it different from what I'm doing today?
I know it looks very different in different venture companies. Initially, I thought, oh, this is going to be so cush compared to in-house. That's people told me. No, it is what you make of it, right? I, being someone who's motivated and want to close roles for my portfolio company, I do the full gamut. Like, I will do one-on-ones with my hiring managers every single week. I create Slack channels with them. I am sourcing pipeline for them. I get really freaked out when I don't have a high enough response rate for myself, and I'll keep sourcing until I'm like, oops, I just booked myself out 3 weeks of calls, right? That's not necessarily the case for every VC. I don't know what they're held accountable to, but I know there's some VCs that are extremely metrics driven, like how many net new calls have you done? How many intros have you done? We're kind of in that middle ground where it's like, just have calls and conversations. Make sure you're sending over quality introductions. If you can make closes, fantastic. We kind of live off of, I guess from the VC side, we live off of NPS score. It's like, are you getting repeat customers if you serviced one portfolio company and they come back to you, even if they're asking you like, hey, can you help us with this other role? It means that they had a really good experience with you. They give investors shout outs, you're in their board decks or whatnot. It looks very different just given you might not always get that close, but you could have held their hand throughout the entire process to support them. So my days look very different. Mondays are usually big on meetings with the portfolio companies, just kind of giving an accountability overview of like, hey, this is the sourcing I've done. Here are the calls that are happening. I want to hear feedback on candidates that you've talked to that I've sent over to you, or maybe you've got them from other venture firms, but want to hear like what's the caliber, what's the calibration that we want to do, and then other days are just filled with sourcing and calls. Lots of calls. I'm talking to candidates day in and day out. I think we took a look this morning. As of the last year and a half, we've done 2,400 conversations across our team. So it's a lot of calls. I'm just hello, pitching myself over and over again. But there's a lot of repeat folks we're chatting with as well, right? Because that's what network building is. I might not have had a role for them to begin with, but I might have a role for them now. Let's fill you in on that role and get you prepared to have a conversation with them if you're interested.
Yes. Okay. What are you doing this all at home? Are you doing it in the office? Are you going to events? Like how do you build your network in the best way? Like what's the best way to get those?
LinkedIn still.
LinkedIn still.
Funny because I am the person on the team that loves tinkering with tools. I haven't found a tool yet that has really saved my life. I've tried the AI tools. Unfortunately, with our workflow, I still have to cross-reference LinkedIn, which is really annoying. So LinkedIn is still kind of our source of truth for where candidates are located and what they're looking for up front. And then, we're constantly trying to streamline our interview processes. We're using other AI tools like MetaView for note-taking, which has saved our life. And then we are trying to work on a tool right now for better network recall for us on. This is actually a huge difference between internal and VC too, is once you've created this network, and I guess it's a little bit more search firm like. I've never been in a search firm, so I'm learning as I go along here too, is I've talked to these thousands of people, a new role has come up. Instead of just doing a brand new pipeline, why don't I start with the people that I've spoken with first and see who's a good fit, who's available, is the location a right match, comp, blah, 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 all of that. So the network recall is the component that we're continuing to try and accelerate because that's a really hard problem to solve. Tagging is my worst nightmare, and tagging does not solve for recalling candidates very well in my experience. But yeah, sometimes I'll just do another LinkedIn search and see the people I am connected with first connection. And that way I also go back and find them that way.
So I did work in a search firm. Robert Half was my first recruiting role. They had a system called MicroJ. So for anyone who is at or from Robert Half, you know what MicroJ is. I don't even know why I remember it, to be honest. It was 2008 or 2009. I recruited for accounting and finance people, 2008, 2009. You can guess how that went.
Boy.
But they had a system where they would, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but they had a ranking system for candidates where it would be numbers in a letter so that you could see what their placeability was, what their professionalism was. And so you would search in that CRM within your zone to try to find those folks. And if you're a Robert Halfer, you know, but I understand the need for something like that, particularly at the portfolio level.
It's going to happen. There's already some things that we've seen that are helping to resurface candidates back into our view when we are looking for something specific. Even MetaView, like I just learned a new product feature of theirs. I can go and type in anyone who's managed more than 10 people, and then it was a conversation with me. Like I can do all of these filters, and they're searching all the notes that they took from.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, that's exactly what I want. And they're continuing to tailor that as well. So it's an open field out there, but people are building.
Yes. Yeah, no, the integration, we use tagging a lot at headcount like on the requisition, so we can tell what happened to a requisition. Then we could search the tags to see like this is what are the number of requisitions that had a salary change or were expedited or whatever, right? And like the tagging system to me, whether it was manually entered like in MicroJ or automatically done with a meta view, is something that I think is a very simple way to, it's just you start to get runaway tags. So I don't know.
We
There's
have
many problems to solve, but
remembering what tag to put on a
I
candidate, plus
know.
calling the tag, that is my failure. Like
Yeah,
I'm
that's,
really bad at
you need a
that.
tag admin or something.
Yes, I know. Exactly.
So what, I know we're coming up on time, but what do you expect? Like what is coming from your portfolio companies from like a QBR perspective? Like what talent information are you reviewing that? Are you listening to it? Are you advising on it? Like how do you interact with the way portfolio companies report on the talent function and what do you look for out of the internal recruiters or internal teams from your portcos, and what do you think this audience would find interesting?
Yeah, it's a little bit more ad hoc. We are not breathing down the necks of our portfolio companies. We're not stating, hey, you need to hire by a certain amount of time. But there are definitely investments where our investors feel very close to, and they say, hey, they need help on engineering. Can you step in and just consult them on what's going on with their process? Maybe set something up a little bit more regularly or once every couple of months with them so that you can help them. Usually after a couple advising sessions, even one, if they're really into hiring, obviously they're asking us for support. If they're like, we just want to know how to make this better, and I try and audit it within that hour time frame I have with them, I recap everything in an email and I'm like, hey, here's some tools and here's some frameworks that can really support you. I've had a few of them that I was like, oh, we made 2 hires just after talking to you. And I'm like, yay, that's exactly what we want out of that, right? That's the entire goal. But outside of that too, I guess on the IC side, consulting's a big part. On the executive side, we just want to make sure that they feel supported. We're more of a support function than we are like a we're checking on you function. We do have for our later stage companies a head of talent roundtable, or like if you're a first in recruiter, we have a roundtable for them so they can connect with each other. I found that particularly useful to have one-on-ones with other talent leaders in Sequoia's network when I was team of one, right? It's really hard to sit on an island by yourself. And especially if you have direct reports and you're at the top and you're like, oh, this is my first time managing too. Is there someone else who like understands my challenge and my struggles? Then you have an entire mentor system there. So we try and build that community internally as well. We're going to do a people leader one once we get some more people leaders at that Series B, Series C level. But we are, again, fully support function. We're not there just being like, hey, hire faster. Only there to support if you're asking us, like, we're trying to hire faster and we can't do that. I think outside of that too, I'm trying to think. Yeah, anytime we get tapped on the shoulder by an investor, like we are going to go sprint for our businesses. We want the best for them as well. But yeah, we don't tell them what to do. They kind of just ask us for the support side.
What do you like center, like if you had to guide somebody and they're like, I'd like to make an improvement, is there like a metric or something that you give them where it's like, all right, well, let's take a look at this first and then we'll see if we can make a an improvement on this individual metric? Is there something like that you do that kind of
Sometimes
guides them?
I try not to get too detailed into what their specific numbers are because, again, how a company wants to run their process, that's fully up to them. I'm not going to tell them what to do. I can only just advise, like, hey, there's this one interview you conduct. We used to do that at one of my old companies, and it's pretty biased. I'm just going to tell you that. Right? You want to do it? Do it. But I'm going to tell you that's going to be one where specific individuals interviewing for your company are not going to shine. And if you don't want to believe me, that's fine. You're just going to continue to see drop off here and your team's going to continue to get false negatives. You're just going to be rejecting everyone, even though they could have been a great addition to your team, just because you're just so stubborn on making that hiring process. And my hiring teams will tell you I'm pretty opinionated when it comes to my advice for them because I've seen what I've seen, right? If it works for them, fine, it works for them. And I'd love to continue to gather that data, but I know what didn't work across many different teams. And I'm happy to share that experience. And if something is not objective in a hiring process, I'm going to be the first one to call that out. I learned that from experience of not doing that before. So,
Yeah,
yes,
it's I
feeling.
hear you go through your experience and I'm like, okay, one, to get into VC, you have to have gone through it as somebody within the realm of like what VC is investing in. Right. So you got to go feel the feelings of being a recruiter in these spaces and experiencing those challenges firsthand so that you have then the context to deliver some sort of advice. With a lot of the advice for these first time, or not, let's not call them first time hiring leaders, but these founders who are also doing hiring, is do your best to hone in on what it is that you're looking for before you go out for a search, and then use a calibration period to hone in and then try to drive towards a good conversion rate with the right process so that the right people are investing the right amount of time to get these hires. And then if you run into roadblocks, the VC is here to support you. We're not here to check. We're not here to like be an extra point of scolding if you're not hitting your numbers. We're here to unblock rather than
Yes.
to, make you feel worse about a result or not. And
Yeah,
so,
and that's
you
the
know,
same thing with interviewing too, right? One thing I told a lot of my engineers that would interview engineers is don't beat a dead horse. If it's clear the candidate doesn't know how to answer your question, don't continue to go down that bad path. It's like it's your job as the interviewer to unlock them on where they do shine, right? And if you could not capture any other signal other than the part that they messed up on, you're a bad interviewer, right? Like you don't know what you're doing and you need to be trained out of that. And you need to be able to help this person see, like, I'm actually better at answering the question this way, right? Or this is what I meant by the question. Just because a candidate doesn't do well in an interview doesn't mean they're a bad candidate. Sometimes you were just a bad interviewer. That's one sad truth, right?
yeah,
And
it
many
is.
people don't want to swallow that pill. That's the hard part about it. But that's the same thing with us. We are an unlock for them. We are not there to say like this is terrible. You're doing this the wrong way. It's hey, have we tried something different yet? Again, we cannot tell them what to do. That's what's very different than the in-house side. In-house side, I actually would tell my team, I'm going to stop sourcing for you until you can figure this out. Like I would threaten that because like I could give you a million people, and that's why we don't really work on the IC stuff on our VC side is because I could give these teams millions of candidates if I wanted to. But if they don't know what they're doing, these are all wasted candidates.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I think, segmenting on, because it's about managing pain, right? I think on the IC side, they're willing to endure a little bit more pain to get to what I believe is perfect. But at the executive level, especially when you're at this scale up stage, if you don't have an executive in place, that's going to be a lot more painful than, making these process compromises to get to what yes is for an executive. So it's like you don't have to leverage that. They know how painful it is to not have that executive, but with an IC, you can maybe extend it a little bit longer and you can go through more candidates. I get it, but the segmentation does definitely help. You don't have to create the pain for someone to take action at the executive level. They
Yeah.
understand it themselves.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I like listening to hear, how the experience, because you and I share a lot. So like listening to how you took what we've been through and then apply it to this situation where you're outside of, a direct producer. Yeah, I think Kraft is lucky to have you. I think the experience that you can bring to a broad set of founders, I think once you've experienced like unicorn status companies, right? And I don't mean that in terms of what we're doing. I mean like a company that went to 1 billion and scaled like crazy and had to go through those growing pains. Like once you've experienced that, being able to spread that message to other people, within the VCs where you have a vested interest, very similar to what we're trying to do here at Unicorn, which is just give our recruiting audience, insight into the experience of what it was like at those companies. But you can't beat actually doing it. So
Yep. And
it's
that's what we
awesome to see how
say.
you've applied that.
Yeah, that's what we say for since we have so many recruiter roles and head of talent roles coming on the market as well. I do advise our portfolio companies of what to look for when it comes to those recruiters and a lot of the learnings of what I didn't have before as a recruiter and why it's really important for someone to come in, especially at the early stage. The founders don't know what they're doing most of the time, right? And that's why they're leaning on a really senior recruiter, a lead, or a head of to come in and support them there. But if you are someone looking for that type of role, you have to get really comfortable with metrics, right? Because if a founder doesn't understand you and they're very opinionated on the way they want to hire, the only thing that's going to help you is numbers. And I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at it to begin with, but now it's like, they're like, oh, Cassie's going to pull the data again. It's like,
Yep,
yes,
we all
I'm
did.
like, because you can't run away from them. And even if it like, makes me look bad, oh, I let too many people into the process to begin with. Hey, that's an accountability metric for me, right? And that's how you improve the overall process from beginning to end for your hiring teams. And so just get really comfortable with numbers is all I can say.
No, I 100% agree. We're recording this in March of 2025, but this month was R for R month, and we focused a lot. I did a podcast with Darren Bush, who is the head of talent at Ericsson, hiring a bunch of recruiters, and we also released a recruiting career ladder. I'd be interested in your feedback if you ever get to. I'll
Yeah.
send it to you. You could see it's like competencies and what we look for in terms of a recruiter's actual skill set. But you could download that now at Unicorn. I'd be curious to know what your feedback is. I think having a good set of foundation as a head of talent for a VC allows these founders to have a confidence in what you're advising them to do, whether it's hiring their own recruiter or getting through a tough search. And I think that they're lucky to have you in that position. I'm curious to know, you got all these openings. If people that are listening want to go apply for these openings or see what they're working with, how do they get in touch with? How do they see what you guys are hiring? Where do you send candidates who are interested with working with you or the portfolio? It's in the description, or when we feature you on the page, you'll get your own
Absolutely.
section.
So jobs.craftventures.com, or you can follow me on LinkedIn. I am posting a lot of the recruiter roles. It's not a network that we're actively supporting. Again, at the IC level, it's not something that we're able to vet bandwidth wise for our portfolio companies, but there's a lot that's coming through. So we want to make sure that we get them some great folks. And I know right now it can feel really discouraging because there's so many people applying to these roles. I hear from our portfolio companies, oh, I got inundated with 300 applications overnight. Where I
Right.
would say is this is something I tell every type of candidate, it's not just recruiters too. If you have metrics, make your resume quantifiable, right? Just saying that you did something at a high level is not good enough. It's like, what was your close rate? How many recs were you working on at the same time? Try and put as many numbers that are actually viable as possible into your resume for it to be very clear example wise what you can offer the business.
I couldn't agree more. We have a template for anyone who's listening. We have a template that kind of has some examples of some recruiters from my network, my resume, about how to write a bullet that says you've done something that has a measurable number, and then a prep document so that when someone asks you what 62% is of numbers, you have the numbers, you know what your metrics say during the interview. But again, we try to provide all these for the listeners, and I encourage everyone to download those things. Jobs.craftventures.com or jobs.craft?
Jobs.craftventures.com.
I got it right the first time.
Yes.
Jobs.craftventures.com for all of the openings that Cassie's currently working on. And follow Cassie on LinkedIn. She's got a great posting cadence and has all the hot jobs as soon as they're available. You get the inside look. So it was awesome to hear about your work, have you on the podcast, learn from your experience. I'm sure we'll cross more paths down the line, but it was great to chat with you, and I look forward to releasing this episode next month.
Thanks so much, Eric. It was fun chatting too.